Hello, grade 4 teachers. In this video, we're going to have a close-up look at the computer science curriculum that is a part of the draft curriculum for the science rolling out officially next year. Before we start, let's have a look at the why computer science should be a part of your classroom. 10 years ago, big software companies started to recognize that they were going to be facing a serious shortage of computer programmers in the industry to keep things growing at the rate that they were at that time. In 2013, Code.org published statistics like this one, anticipating that there were going to be 1.4 million job openings that were unfilled 10 years later. Fast forward to 10 years later, and while we haven't quite met such a dire statistic, there are currently 500,000 job openings in the computer sciences and programming fields. So it's really important that we give our students opportunities to learn about what computer programming is and what careers in computer sciences might look like. Because for technology to continue to advance, we need more and more people going into these fields. And in fact, it really doesn't matter what field students are thinking about pursuing as a career in their adulthood. Computer coding, computational thinking, and computer science skills are going to benefit them and help them get better jobs or be better candidates for jobs over people in the same industries. Because we know that technology is touching literally every field that's out there today. With your students being in grade 4, it's many years until they will be launching into the work industries. And we know that there's no way that technology is going to be less important as the future comes along. So any skills that you can give your students that will give them a solid foundation and understanding of what computer coding is really going to help them out, not only if they decide to go into a computer sciences career, but really in any career that they choose to go into. You're already familiar with the organizational structure of the New Alberta curriculum, where we have an organizing idea at the top that maintains the same throughout all of the grades that it is within. And one of those organizing ideas in the new science curriculum is computer science. And computer science is one of the organizing ideas that goes all the way from kindergarten through grade 6. So we see computer science as an important topic all the way from kindergarten through grade 6. And in this video, I'm going to show you ways that you can teach it explicitly to your students, but also ways that you can make some connections into your other subjects and daily classroom routines. So then underneath that organizing idea, we see a guiding question and a learning outcome that is specific to your grade. And here in grade 4, we can see that students examine and apply design processes to meet needs as their outcome. So design thinking and design processes is a key piece of the grade 4 curriculum. And they've provided plenty of knowledge in the knowledge column to give you and your students the background information or the key pieces of information that you need to know to understand how to meet these understandings and skills and procedures. You don't probably have a lot of background knowledge in coding and computational thinking, so the knowledge area in the curriculum is your friend in helping you glean what those pieces of knowledge are. So the big organizing idea, again, that is all the way from kindergarten through grade 6 for computer science, states that problem solving and scientific inquiry are developed through the knowledgeable application of creativity, design, and computational thinking. So while we see much more specific information in the cusps, overarching the whole computer science curriculum is the idea that students understand design thinking, computational thinking, and creative thinking, and how it connects into being inventors or engineers or computer scientists. When we look at how creativity connects into computer science or the sciences specifically, I think we can consider these 4 points as sort of the main ideas behind understanding creativity and how it applies to the sciences. Originality, risk-taking, imagination, and flexibility all connect into finding new solutions to old problems, looking for a new pathway to get to the same destination, and understanding that there are many different ways to solve a problem. And some of those ways may be more efficient or better in some other ways, but just recognizing that there's always another creative way to do something. And scientists and engineers have advanced our society since we began through creative thinking, taking old things and making them new again, and adding on technological advancements as they come. So that's the creativity piece. Creativity has come up more specifically in the lower grades. Design thinking process is coming up in grade 4 now as a part of the knowledge and understandings and skills and procedures that your students will actually specifically be able to do. So in grade 4, you are going to be focusing on having students using the design thinking process. And this can be applied specifically to learning about the design thinking process initially, but then you can find ways to apply design thinking throughout your other curriculum areas and even some of your daily classroom routines and activities. When we start to teach students about design thinking, there are tons of resources online. You can find YouTube videos at your students' level. This example here from Sesame Street maybe is a little bit low for grade 4s, but I find that kids of all ages tend to love Sesame Street. But again, if you just go to YouTube and punch in design thinking for students, you will start to come across some videos. So this one specifically is going to teach students about empathy. I have another activity that I've done personally with a lot of students over my years working in Wetaskiwin Regional Schools, rolling out the ideas of coding and STEM and STEAM to our elementary schools. And I've had tons of success getting students to understand empathy and start working through the design process with this short activity. I start by telling students, just going to pause this for 1 second, that we're going to be watching a video about a young lady who has a disability, and that while they watch the video, I want them to think about ways to solve some of the problem that we see her have. So they're to watch the video and just think about what it might be like to be in Mandy's position. Watch the video and based on what we see her say and do in the video, what can we determine are pieces of her character? What is Mandy like based on what we watch? So let's go ahead and just watch this video. If you're already familiar with it, it's about 7 minutes long. If you want to skip ahead and save it for later. Otherwise, please enjoy along with me.
Wow. And how old are you now?
29. So it's 10 years.
Wow. And Mandy, how did you lose your hearing, if you don't mind me asking?
I have a connective tissue disorder, so basically I got sick and my nerves deteriorated.
Growing up, the only thing I wanted to do was sing. I ended up going to school for vocal music education so that I could have that be my life. When I was in college, I thought I had an ear infection, and it just got worse and worse. And by Christmas, I was borderline legally deaf in both ears. There was one day where the teacher was going to play the piano, and I had to chart out everything that he was playing. And I had my pencil ready, and everybody else's pencils start moving, and I'm just waiting for the test to start. And then one by one, every person just got up and left the room. And I didn't hear enough to even start the test. That was the last day I was a part of music program. That was a bad day.
We were sitting in the car together to come home. She said, "Dad, I can't remember what your voice sounds like anymore." At that moment, you knew that things would never be the same.
Everything that I had ever wanted was just going away, and I couldn't stop it.
The music is alive inside of her. The only question was, what could she do with it now?
My dad suggested that we play a song. I said, well, that's crazy. But I had a guitar tuner, and I hummed my starting note and just went for it. Music now isn't about the sound, it's about the feeling.
I'm excited, I'm nervous, I'm scared, so I'm just trying to.
It's not the dream that I always had. That's okay, because I showed up and I did something I never believed I could do.
So, you were singing before you lost your hearing?
Yeah, I've been singing since I was 4. So I left music after I lost my hearing and then figured out how to get back into singing with muscle memory, using visual tuners and trusting my pitch.
So your shoes are off because you're feeling the vibration. Is that how you're following the music?
Yeah, I'm feeling the tempo, the beat through the floor.
And Mandy, what are you going to sing?
I'm gonna sing a song that I wrote called Try.
Okay, can you tell me what it's about?
After I lost my hearing, I gave up. But I want to do more with my life than just give up. So.
Good for you. Good for you. Okay, well, look, this is your moment, and good luck.
Okay.
Mandy, I don't think you're going to need a translator for this. It's incredible. I mean, I've done this a long time. That was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen and heard. Come here. Thank you so much.
And this is the part when I do this live video with students that I may have some empathy streaming right down my face if I have gotten caught up in it again. And it's a great time to just explain to the students that those feelings that are being invoked in us when we watch this person go through her journey through this audition, when we feel sad for her in the beginning and we're celebrating for her at the end, that is empathy. When you can feel how someone else would feel, that is exactly what you need to do when you're designing something for an audience. You need to put yourself in their shoes and think about how they feel and what they think and what they might need. Some of us may be very natural at empathy, and things like this touch us emotionally and we can feel the feelings and they come down our face. And some of us might have to work a little hard and it's more of a thinking thing, and we really have to think about what it might be like to be that person. But everybody can use empathy to help in the design process to go ahead and create something for an audience. So in this case, our audience is Mandy, and I would ask the students all of those questions about how do you think Mandy feels? And then we would move into defining what is Mandy's problem. And of course, immediately the students will come at that she is deaf and has a hearing impaired. But for our activity and for our purposes, that is not Mandy's problem. That is a physical impairment at this time, cannot be fixed. And we can certainly think that in some future, a disability like this, technology may indeed be able to fix. But Mandy's already figured out how she can sing and be hearing impaired at the same time. What I have to lead students to her problem in this case being that she has to take her shoes off on the stage to perform. And maybe we could think of a way to help her out with her fashion, since she's probably going to be performing on many big stages. And how could we help Mandy so that she wouldn't have to take her shoes off and go on her stocking feet on stage? And I work through this with students. It doesn't take about as long as it's taken me here with you to have these conversations, watch the video, put them in groups, have them working collaborative. We know more brains are better than one. Maybe we even do that big brainstorm together about different ideas. I've had so many creative things handed into me by students doing this project. It was a STEM activity specifically on jumping into the design thinking process, learning a lot about empathy as a pre-activity towards a whole 3 days full of robotics and coding. But we'd always start with this activity where students just drew out their sketch designs and their ideas on paper and gave them to me. And we just got that creative process going and getting students feeling comfortable with sharing and working with each other and knowing that no ideas are wrong and that all of your designs are as excellent as the next. And I have an example here of something that was actually handed in by a student. Very simple. Let's just hook some wires up between her shoes and the speakers and she'll be good to go, and she can wear some shoes. And I've seen a plethora of other ideas from different wearables that are communicating either wirelessly or with hidden wires, to the music equipment on the stage, to something as simple as designing shoes that have holes in the soles or no soles so that she could still feel the vibrations in the bottom of her feet while also wearing shoes. So a really great way to introduce your students to empathy and get their creative thinking juices flowing. I like to use videos when I'm showing kids about design thinking. There is a YouTube channel, Crash Course Kids, where they have a series of videos that go over the different parts of the design thinking process. So their Define video is good, so are all of their other ones, and they're definitely geared at that probably grade 4+ level, so just perfect for grade 4 students to be learning a little bit more about the design thinking process. I find that brainstorming is the one thing that we probably naturally do most often in classrooms. That's a piece of the design thinking process. So it's easy to connect this piece in for students when we're working through a project that we actually expect them to go through the process. We know what brainstorming is, just focusing always in science that we are being creative and creative thinkers. We're looking for those different paths, and that just, there are no bad ideas. Everything is a good idea. The more, the better. And getting students to be okay with putting out, sharing in that whole class setting, I think initially, so that you can do a lot of modeling with what good brainstorming is, and then working towards those smaller collaborative groups and practicing brainstorming in that way too. Any chances we have to just do some brainstorming, call it that, make that connection into the design process. So again, when we're doing design process, we're expecting students to use it. They have lots of connections to make, and they've had lots of opportunities to practice with that. Prototyping and testing. My graphic here isn't probably specifically correct, because we know that at the end of the design process is where we often need to loop around a few times before we reach a final product that is good and truly meets our intended needs or the needs of our audience. Students naturally prefer this more linear path where when we're done, we're done. They can be really resistant to going back to something that they feel is a finished project and doesn't necessarily need any improvements. They want to put it behind. So you have to work with your students on coming up with an idea, figuring out what worked and what didn't work, going back to the drawing board, making some adjustments, readjustments, fine-tuning things, going through that testing process and that redesigning process over and over again to achieve a better result. This is a key piece of the design thinking process. It's also a key thread throughout the computer sciences curriculum in regards to looking at how technology has advanced society over time, and how creative thinking and computational thinking and design thinking are evidenced in the world around us and things that scientists and engineers have created. Excuse me. Students are not very good at accepting failure. I would venture to say humans aren't always good at accepting failure, and being an inventor, an engineer, a designer requires of us that we are capable to fail and be okay with that. Go back and look at our failures, figure out what caused them, and then try again until we meet success. You will have to work with your students. You may find that there are even tears when they've built some type of a computational artifact, or they're trying to do some block-based coding and they can't figure it out, or it's not doing what they think it should. They can often have an expectation that someone else needs to give them the answer and solve this problem. So working with students on the idea that it's okay to fail, and that our failures are what give us the opportunities to fix things, to make things better, or to advance things even further. So that third key piece in the organizing idea of computer science is computational thinking. So computational thinking has been covered a little bit more extensively in grade 3. Your students, if they've had the grade 3 curriculum, which they should have unless you're optionally implementing this year, they should have some of this computational foundations. If you are optionally implementing and maybe your students don't have some of this foundational things, you can do computational thinking with them in an activity as simple as talking about how to make a sandwich. So we're taking this completely away from computers and computer science, though it definitely connects very nicely into, and is a way to explain computational thinking with something that your students already understand. So if we take a sandwich. And in this case, we've got a pretty nice, fancy looking sandwich here, but we could have a conversation about what is a sandwich. And my sandwich might be different than your sandwich. Well, let's break that down. What are the things, like what goes into a sandwich? What are the different elements? And we're not only talking about ingredients, we're also talking about steps you might have to take or processes that are involved in building a sandwich. We're going to work at creating a set of instructions for building a sandwich that could be followed by a human or a machine. So first step in computational thinking is that decomposition. What are all of the elements? What are the ingredients, the steps, the processes involved in building a sandwich? Can we brainstorm this out, decompose a sandwich down, and look at what those parts are? And then we can move into some pattern recognition. And if we're using a pictorial example and we're doing this as a class, as in I have on the last slide, we're all working with, that same kind of sandwich. Maybe we've broken into groups or we're doing this individually and you've asked them to create instructions for their favorite kind of sandwich. If that's the case, of course, then these kinds of sorts and things are going to look different depending on, what that whole sandwich that the student is creating instructions for looks like. We could, in the case of the one example that I'm using, we could start to look at what's the same and what's the difference between the processes and the ingredients that we are going to be putting in our sandwich. And we could determine that some of the ingredients need to be sliced and some of them need to be washed and some actually need to be washed and sliced. So we have ingredients that can be grouped up in certain ways, and then we also have some actions, and we've determined that there's two sort of different actions that have to happen here, in preparation for our sandwich. And we could also abstract to what are some other things, like I see your sandwich just has lettuce and bologna and cheese. Are there other things that would fall into those categories? If we're using, say, packaged meat, we didn't have, it needs to be opened. That's something that could come into play when we're looking at that pattern abstraction and looking for similarities and differences. What are some other things that need to be washed? And we maybe have conversations. Are there things like foods that we would wash that you wouldn't put in a sandwich? But does that same process apply? If you're going to eat this food, first it needs to be washed. So we're just thinking about steps, thinking about how things can be grouped together. And this is moving towards simplifying things. Can we make these steps, can we make these instructions as simple as possible by grouping activities and things together and maybe making some more general statements like, slice the meat as opposed to slice the roast beef. Now I need a totally different set of instructions if I want to make a turkey sandwich. Is there a way that we can write this instruction so that it wouldn't matter what kind of meat you're using? And then we're going to move into condition. If it's in a big piece, it needs to be sliced. If it's in a package, it needs to be open. And so, again, just conversations. We're just talking about building a sandwich, but we're actually working deep into a computational thinking. And we could also abstract, now make in connections to, is it possible to make this process so simple that there are other things that we could follow those same steps and also create, and maybe building something like a taco or making a salad or a soup, because we see some of those same types of ingredients, and we're going to be talking about, washing and slicing before these other steps again. So just those efficiencies, breaking it down, let's make it as simple as possible, connect to things that we're familiar with, look at ways we could apply those instructions to something else, and then finally land on that algorithm design where we're now actually building that set of instructions, and we can talk about how specific it needs to be. And if we want to get some ingredients and actually, get messy and try and follow the instructions that the students have created, that's a possible fun way to do it too. When you make things fun, memorable, the concepts that are connected to that are just going to be more stickable for your students as well. So those are those 3 big ideas that encompass kindergarten through grade 6 computer science. All of the cusps are in some way connecting into the idea that creativity, computational thinking, and design thinking are processes that engineers, scientists, inventors use to make things for us. So then below the organizing idea, of course, are our learning outcomes. There's just a single learning outcome for computer science for each of the grades from kindergarten through 6, and it has a pretty natural progression. Kindergarten up to grade 2, students are learning a lot just about instructions. The language of algorithm isn't in the curriculum specifically. Teachers are just being expected to have students understand that sets of instructions can help us get things done, and that instructions need to be in a certain order. We start to get into how sometimes if there's a mistake in instructions, we might have to find the mistake to get the proper end result. That's debugging, a computer concept. Another concept that comes up earlier in the grades is the idea of repetition, which in computer coding language is a loop. But early on, students are taught that sometimes using repeated steps can make our instructions more efficient. So in the case of the sandwich example, is there a way we can say, repeat for each ingredient that needs to be sliced? And instead of writing out for each of those ingredients that bit of instructions, we can say, do these 2 things to all of the ingredients that fall into this one category. And we're working all of the K-2, even grade 3 computer science skills and procedures in, and then bridging some of those gaps as well. The overarching ideas of the computer science, understanding the following of instructions, being creative thinkers. I like to encourage students to be amazing scientists, and we could use this graphic that shows students how to not only do those pieces of the design and computational thinking, like to have a strong heart, to be brave and take chances. That connects into, perseverance and not being afraid to try again when we haven't met success. So these are just some cute posters that you can use to help put some of those ideas forward for your students really visually, and they would be helpful for computer science as well as all of your science topics. Just a couple of different versions here to suit your fancy. So with that gap bridging from kindergarten up to grade 3, where students have really been asked to learn about instructions. One nice thing here is that because instructions are a part of daily classroom routines all of the time, it's easy to make connections without doing big long lessons on what has been missed in the lower grades for computer science. Because what has been missed is just maybe making the connection into how when I as a teacher give you a set of instructions, that is the same as when we program a robot or a machine or a piece of software. You are like my little robots, and I have given you a whole bunch of different algorithms this year that you guys all are able to complete now because you know what the instructions are. So for example, when the fire bell rings, you're programmed with an algorithm for the steps that you are supposed to take when that happens. When you come in first thing in the morning, there's an algorithm for what you're supposed to do when that happens. When the bell goes at the end of the day, we have an algorithm for what we're supposed to do. When we do this type of equation in math, we follow a set of steps. That is an algorithm. When I give you instructions, it's the same as you can give instructions to a machine. So within your classroom routines, within your learning instructions, within your other subject areas, you have opportunities to have students thinking about how algorithms work, understanding that instructions have to be in a particular order, knowing that when the end result isn't what we get, If we've worked out our math question and the answer is wrong, the mistake, we need to go back into our work and find that mistake. That is the same as debugging a computer program. If we can come up with a way to make it more efficient and say to do this a certain amount of times, we have met that. What is a loop? By giving students that knowledge, you're going to bridge those gaps and cover the pieces from kindergarten through grade 3 without having to spend a ton of extra time. And as I've said, debugging is the coding knowledge from grade 2 that's really specific to coding. But again, we students already go out and look for mistakes when things go wrong. It's just putting that word debugging to it and recognizing that that is a process that not only happens in daily lives when we're doing things and following sets of instructions, but that it also happens when we are coding computers. When things don't work right, we have to debug and figure out the problem. So just drawing your attention to that one. And of course, I had also mentioned loops. Those are the two coding terminologies in the lower grades that your grade 4s may not have. Other than that, everything is mostly following sets of instructions. So looking a little bit more closely at specifically what coding is, because in grade 4, your students are expected to understand what coding is and even expected to use some block-based coding to make something online. So coding consists of many, many different languages that computers understand. With the advent of AI, having a basic understanding just of how coding and algorithms work is going to make it possible for our students in the future to use AI to write any coding language that exists. Artificial intelligence is going to open up the world of programming to literally anybody who understands what computational thinking is and can break something down into a simple set of instructions that can then be translated into that language that the computers understand. We see computer coding in almost everything we touch in our daily lives, everything from our new smart appliances to home thermostats. Our transportation has programming in it. This, again, is why it's so important for our students to be learning these skills, because we know it's just going to be an advantage to them when they get older and enter the workforce. Understanding coding is going to help them out in any industry. And then not only in all of our daily every life electronics that we see this, there's a whole world of robots that are coming to being and being invented, and programming is what makes those go too. Students will make connections to either fictional robots that they've seen on TV. They may be familiar with some kinds of toys, but they might not know that there are so many working robots out in the world already. And there are robots that do everything from milking cows to cleaning oil spills off the ocean to performing surgery on parts of the human body that can't physically be reached by human hands. So robots are a huge piece of that coding. It's a way to get kids excited and just thinking about what that future world could look like and how coding and robotics can have an impact and how they want to be those people making that impact. I think sometimes, especially us as adults, may have an idea that coding is something similar to complicated sets of numbers that we really don't understand. In fact, that isn't what coding is at all. Coding is very, very simple. So here is some computer science vocabulary. If you and your students have a basic grasp on each of these ideas, you are more than ready to jump in and learn computer coding. And through this next activity that I'm just going to walk through very quickly, you can give your students most of the computer science skills and procedures from kindergarten through grade 2 with just one quick activity with these slides. First, having students understand that what coding really is just putting a set of instructions in order and recognizing that instructions could be pictures like this. It could be something someone has told us out loud. It might be something that we've read in words. There's many different ways that we can get instructions. For following instructions in order, that's literally what computer programming is. Then we move into an activity where we're going to tell the students that we're going to turn them into our little robots and that we're going to use our magic remote control or our finger to point or whatever to have them start out their program. So we've covered the word event. We know that that's what is the thing that makes an algorithm run. We're going to show students that the green start button is going to be our indicator of event. Now we need to learn our language. When we see the letter R, we'll stomp our right foot. When we see the letter L, we're going to stomp our left foot. And when we see an H, we're going to clap our hands together. And then we can have the students, practice and make sure that we understand the language. Always going to be reminding them that it does require an event, as in me pointing, the push of the button, the flag goes up, I lift my phone. Something has to kick off the algorithm. You will have students that will start stomping and clapping as soon as you show them the first algorithm, and you have to make that reminder. So we'll do some really slow-based practice. Okay, boys and girls, start. And work them through. I'm going to really over-exaggerate my stomp and clap. We'll do some simple examples, add on. And once we've got this concept of, you know the language, I give you an algorithm. It doesn't matter what order I put these steps in. You know your language. You're able to run this algorithm when I say start. Now, I can introduce them to the concept of loop and explain to them that when they see our algorithm inside a loop like this with a number on it, this means now we're going to stomp our left foot and clap our hands 3 times before stopping. And then we can move into what a forever loop is. And that means we're going to keep stopping and clapping until something else, another event happens to stop us from performing that algorithm over and over. And in this case, now we need another event. When we see the stop button, then we know we're going to stop this forever loop. And then we can practice one and let them do their thing as long as you can handle the noise. And then once we're done, once we're tired of the noise, you can pop up a video that mine is not playing here, but they will in fact be stomping and clapping the rhythm for We Will Rock You. They may not recognize it, but another fun way. And then bringing that video in, having students should likely be stopping and clapping in time together, in sync together, I should say. This is our opportunity to have a conversation about how this is how machines and humans are different. Machines, had they all started that algorithm at a different time, would have continued to be out of sync with each other the whole time. You guys, with your sentient minds, were listening to all of the other robots around you, and you all ended up eventually getting in sync with each other so that you were all performing the algorithm at the same time and creating a rhythm. And that is the difference between a robot brain or a computer brain and a human brain. A human brain is able to make those decisions. A robot or a computer brain can only do exactly what we've told it to do. And then we, at whatever point, of course, can stop all the stomping and clapping and ask the students to sit back down. So right there, in a very short, easy to do lesson with your students, you have brought in most of the skills and procedures from kindergarten up to grade 3. We've talked about loop. We didn't do debugging. That is another piece that we can bring in easily too, with some movements, or if you start using some arrow movements and having kids actually move around space, and then we might start running into desks and we can talk about, what adjustments did you make so you didn't run into the desk. That's kind of like debugging when we find an error in a program. And you've been able to give your students the background knowledge they need and might be missing now, ready to jump into what the grade 4 curriculum is specifically regarding computer science. Some other ways that you can connect computational thinking, the processes of coding, putting instructions in order, anytime you've got grids and arrows, this could be just sketching arrows quickly on paper. You could have some like laminated cards, sets of them that you can use with your grid activities. And this is just a matter of, you know, how does the butterfly move around on this grid? Can you lay out an algorithm with arrows that accomplishes this task? So that's going to, again, be covering those lower level computer science outcomes, getting students ready to write computer algorithms in a block-based program. You can make connections into other things that you're doing in other subjects as well. Asking students to write a set of instructions for a math process is going to be having them designing an algorithm, having them do it in a group, and now we're hitting this skill and procedure where we're to collaborate to design an algorithm to solve a problem. It doesn't say that it has to be a computer algorithm. So any set of instructions, something like counting by twos, qualifies to meet that computer science outcome while maybe checking off some math outcomes as well. And in this other example here, I would give students this little image of Max skip counting and he's made a mistake. Can you find the mistake? Now we're bringing that debugging into math class too. So looking into the knowledge, there's a lot of knowledge in grade 4 computer science. We are talking about design and artifacts and design processes, and we're seeing the word algorithm coming up in reference to sets of instructions. So lots for your students to learn and know. But many things are just things that you can, like I say, connect in. Debugging is a computer word. Where does that fit in here? The students, you know, talking with them about problem solving. Like I say, if they've gone and looked at a math problem and figured out where they made a mistake, oh, you debugged your math problem. And we've covered that old knowledge, and then that opens up this into design thinking and design processes. So you can see design all over the knowledge, and students are being asked to create artifacts. And in grade 4, artifacts are considered to be anything from algorithms to models and prototypes. It could be something that's on paper. It could be something that's in 3D. So there's lots of opportunities to connect this into other areas of learning and have your students doing design thinking as much as possible. Lots of knowledge on design thinking, but the understanding, which is much more concise and simple, just really says design involves processes that can transform ideas into artifacts that meet needs. So just getting students to understand that the design thinking process is a way to take things from imagination into reality, and that computer engineers and scientists and inventors and other kinds of engineers have used design thinking since the beginning of time to create things for humans to make our lives more easy, more efficient, or in some way, shape, or form better. So as we get to the specific skills and procedures, we see that students are asked to plan and create an artifact. And again, it's just an artifact, so this does not have to involve technology in any way, shape, or form. If you have students creating something in one of your other subjects, we're going to be able to connect in these design thinking pieces as well. We're looking at availability of cost of materials, and design, again, can be connected into any type of project. Testing can be connected into other projects, providing each other feedback, and then collaborating design and algorithm. Writing those sets of instructions, that's that extra piece that you may have to add on to a project or cover explicitly outside of other design-based projects, just to make sure that you're also working on that coding-specific algorithm design. So I've pulled the algorithm design out here for that specific sake, and just looking at one example. So this connects into one of your other science organizing ideas. Students are being asked to create a model of a water ecosystem, including animals and plants that live there. While they are working on showing you that they have this other science understanding, they could also be covering these skills and procedures by working through the design process on this project. And whether you have them making a 3D diorama with paper and cardboard, or they're actually creating a slides presentation, which would be a digital artifact, computational artifact, or moving even to the level of creating something in a program like Scratch with block-based coding that not only shows you that they have all of these skills and procedures from computer science, they also have the other about building an algorithm, and then they're using that to show you what they know about some other science topic. I think it's kind of exciting that design thinking is the sort of the key piece of the grade 4 curriculum, because it gives you so many opportunities to have students using design thinking throughout their classroom lessons and daily activities. So they should be really comfortable with what the design thinking process is by the end of the year, and giving them opportunities to connect it into different subjects, different projects, different topics will just make it more accessible, give them more connections, and hopefully a better chance of success that everybody's going to make a connection somewhere. And again, walk away with a real solid understanding of how to use the design thinking project. You could literally apply this to any subject, almost any project. So out of some conservation stuff in another science unit, students are asked in Earth Systems to create a plan to implement a conservation practice in the local community. Excellent spot. Throw in the design thinking piece, have them work through that as they're also completing this Earth Sciences project, and you can check off computer sciences and Earth Systems at the same time. Design thinking can be brought into any of your subjects. It's really just about how you're framing an activity or a project that the students are going to do for them, and then asking them to move through those pieces. And all of the steps of the design thinking process may not necessarily apply to every single project or assignment or activity that you have students doing, but there will be lots of ways that you can reframe your projects, reframe those assignments, so that you can incorporate as many pieces of the design thinking model as possible as well. Asking students to plan a piece of art for a classmate or a specific staff member, asking them to do some different pieces of writing, like a call to action on a certain cause, or writing a proposal to the principal of the school for something that they think the school should have or do. You would have the ability to work through design thinking on that. STEM lends itself naturally. Any projects, even experiments and scientific investigations you're doing, if you pose the problem to the students first and ask them to figure out the way to get to the solution, you're going to be working the design process. And you can even bring it into something like physical education and wellness by asking students, again, to create something for someone else, asking them to design a good warm-up for a younger grade phys ed class would be working some of their physical education and wellness knowledge, as well as incorporating computer science into that too. So some overarching how you can present this across the different subjects, and then just looking specifically at the stages, the steps of design thinking, in some ways that you can work these in the other subjects too. In empathizing, learning about our audience, we're creating art for someone else. So interviews, filling out a survey to get that information. We're going to need to work through what kinds of questions should be in the interview and what kinds of questions should be on the survey, because students are going to need to learn how to get the information that they need from their audience. Say if we're going to do a call to action for a cause, students are going to need to look into the cause and have some understanding for the people who fight for this cause and why they do that. We could be if we're building something, say in a STEM project for a younger grade, so sharing science projects with younger students is an excellent way to get your students a deeper level understanding of those science concepts that they've built something on. And then if they know that they're going to be presenting their projects to a younger grade, we can pull in the empathy piece by asking them to think about what did you like when you were in grade 3? And that's a really great place to start with empathy. Asking students to identify with someone that they used to be may be a little bit easier than identifying with someone that they aren't familiar with and would have to think, a lot further to try and think what it's like to walk a mile in those people's shoes. Everybody remembers what it was like to be a few years younger, what your preferences were in kindergarten over grade 4, etc. So just asking students to create something for a younger grade is going to let them practice empathy in a safe and easy way when they're first learning this. Same with the example of the class warm-up, or if they're planning a family meal for a family. If you've given them, this could be information that they've actually been given about a fictional family. Maybe they're actually interviewing someone and creating these meal plans. But again, just thinking about, what if I'm making some food for some other person who likes and dislikes different things than me? What am I going to do to figure out what I should be putting in this meal plan for someone who's not me? And we're going to be working those empathy skills. Defining, that's the part where we determine what's the problem and, what needs to be done to solve it. Mostly, what is the problem? So again, we're connecting this into other areas. Are we in fine arts going to come up with a plan? I'm going to draw something for this person. I'm going to list out what are the key points, colors that they love and colors that they don't love. That needs to be a part of my definition. Are they looking for a sculpture or a drawing or a painting? So we need to define sort of what is it that I'm going to be making. This applies to a piece of writing. It applies to a project I'm presenting to younger students. It's that planning piece, figuring out, we've been presented with this problem or a challenge. This is it in its simplest form. So now that I can move into brainstorming. So brainstorming works best with more brains. We might do this all out of order. We might do the brainstorming right after we've presented the challenge so that everybody can contribute. And then everybody can also go back into that well for ideas as they're sorting out and working through their art project, their piece of writing, their 3D model. There are ways to connect this into anything that we're doing. You don't need to make unnatural connections, but you'll see, as I say, there's a chance for them to say, this is, I'm writing a call to action for a specific cause. These are the things I know need to be in my call to action. I have defined how I'm going to get to my end point. Prototyping. We have students do this all the time. We don't call it prototyping necessarily, and we don't connect it to the design process, but it's easy enough to do this. We're doing a rough draft of the writing. We're doing a point form planning of the writing. We're filling out a graphic organizer for the writing or the art project. And then we're going to probably build something as well. So we might not do a rough draft and a final draft of the artwork. And with art specifically, I'm creating something, but this is the piece where now we're going to move into the design process, and we maybe aren't used to having to go back and refine an artwork or a meal plan we've created for somebody, but we're going to push this because we are working the design process as well. So then we get into the testing phase for any of these things where we've been using something like interviews or surveys to learn about our audience. We're going to go to our audience and we're going to get feedback. Here's the sculpture I made. Tell me if it's good. Tell me what needs to be improved or needs to be changed. Give a classmate your piece of writing and ask them to give you feedback. Do you think this meets its purpose? Do you think I'm going to convince these people to go forward with this call to action? Have someone look at the meal plan again. Look at compare it off with your ideating, your little list of what does everybody like and dislike. Can you check this over for me? Does it look good? And just getting that feedback, and then going through reiteration, considering improving, making adjustments, fine-tuning the project to better meet the needs of the audience. So whether it's specifically a science concept or we're, like we say, doing something in one of our other subjects, if the students are making something based on a parameter that you've given them in the beginning, a problem, and they've worked through all of these pieces, you're going to be hitting computer science while also doing other subjects as well. And then beyond, to take it and connect in that last piece about the computer or about an algorithm, would be to ask students to write a set of instructions. So you've gone through this whole process now. Could you come up with a set of instructions to make a piece of art for Mrs. Smith? You made a piece of art for Mrs. Smith. She's very happy with it. Could you write instructions so that next year someone could take that and just make a piece of artwork that Mrs. Smith would love without having to work through the whole design process because you've already done that? So that would be creating that algorithm. And we could ask students to do that for anything that they've been asked to do. That's a great check gauge to see that they understood the process. If they're able to, give you back that process, that's a really good demonstration that they understand the process too. So moving into computer programming, while the grade 4 curriculum is talking all about design thinking, we are wanting students to design an algorithm to solve a problem. I really think you do also want them getting into the block-based coding. Coming into grade 5 and 6, they're expected to be using it. Grade 6, they're supposed to just create something. If you can give your students a chance to learn block-based coding, do some practicing ahead, you're going to help them out in older grades. And again, give them those life skills that are going to be advantageous no matter what field of work they choose to go into when they finally do get there. So looking right off the hop, code.org is, as I said earlier, supported by a ton of big tech companies because they have dire demand for programmers in the tech industry. This starts out as low as pre-reader, so they have a full curriculum. Your students can go and sign in and have their progress tracked. They can start at a level that makes sense for them. So if they've done some block-based coding before, they might be able to move a little bit further along. There's different kinds of activities that will speak to different personality types. And as I said, even it starts as early as pre-reader lessons. If the CS Fundamentals course is a great place to start, it might not be CS. Something Fundamentals is a perfect place to start if you're not sure where else. Check out code.org. So much there for your students to learn. Google also has CS First. Here, students will be doing some programming activities in connection with some other types of projects and activities like writing projects or some project planning. So there's some great resources there ready for you to use, another full curriculum that you can just get your students right into. They can follow along the self-guided tutorials. You don't even need to know anything about coding for your class to start right away. And maybe you even have a chance to sit down and get hands-on yourself with them at the same time and learn along with them too. I am a huge fan of Scratch programming. If you have seen some of my connections to the other science organizing ideas videos, you may have seen some Scratch activities that I've created that are specific to skills and procedures and some of the other science topics. I'm planning to make some more of these. I want to also do some for math and literacy curriculum as well. So you can check those out on my site, etwithmrsd.com. I've got some slides there. The slides show the instructions for the activities. There's, in most cases, an example activity that you can check out to sort of see what that end product looks like. Also, right within the Scratch interface under the Ideas tab, they've got a number of tutorials that are really easy to follow as well and walk students through, learning the Scratch interface, understanding some of the basic things around loops and conditional statements and the other parts of the Scratch coder. And there's a variety of activities, again, there for different personality types. Asking students to create something in Scratch to show you what they know about anything from a science topic to a social topic to something, writing a story in English. You can elevate that subject area as well as just bring some computer science into it. Another really great place. This is awesome for fast finishers. Blockly.games is a site created by Google that just has a handful of really simple games that use the block-based coding. I think actually some even get into text-based coding. You can see that you use the blocks, and when you run the program, it shows the text-based coding as well. So that's like a nice little bridge in. It's a quick one-off. These activities can be completed mostly in just a few minutes. It will save the students progress. So like I say, that's a great fast finisher place. Also just a good place to start for yourself to just get your head a little bit around how block coding works. Those can all be done on Chromebooks or computers. And I would also highly encourage you to check out some coding toys. If you don't already know about the ATA Library Maker Kits, you need to run on over to that website and check them out. They have so many toys available for you to borrow that they actually have to catalog it alphabetically in different pages because the pages wouldn't load. There's just so much. These are currently underused, though the more we get the word spread, they could be harder to get. Head on into the ATA library. Make sure you're logged into your ATA account. The process is really simple. You borrow the stuff. They will ship it out to you. When you're finished with it, you just ship it back. All the costs are paid by the ATA, and it's a great way for you to test out some different technology with your students without going to the level of committing to purchasing it. You can just test some things out and then make some purchasing decisions later if you have that opportunity. At the grade 4 level, if you do have the opportunity to buy some robotics for your students, I'd highly encourage you to check out either Microbits or Mini Spheros. They both have an online block-based coding platform that the kids can do the programming in, and they are fun, immediate feedback. You can put the program in right away and the little robot or the microbit is doing what you want it to. They're standalone. They don't require a bunch of other components. Really had fun with the kids painting with the Spheros. This was after they did some Cartesian plane stuff. So those are a couple that I recommend for classroom toys to teach coding that would be really great for the grade 4 level. There are a ton of other coding toys out there that you could check out as well. Don't forget to borrow from the ATA Maker Kits first if you aren't already familiar with something, because you don't know what you don't know, and there's lots of stuff there that you can check out. I hope you've enjoyed the video and that you are ready to have a great time teaching computer science to your students.